Good. Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call this administrative meeting of the Bernalillo County Commission to order this Tuesday, February 7th, 5 p.m. at the Ken Sanchez Commission Chambers. Before we have a moment of silence and a Pledge of Allegiance, I would like to defer to Commissioner Olivas for a couple of words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say tonight, before we take our moment of silence, I'd like to ask members present here today to recognize the really tragic loss of life that we recently experienced in the East Mountain communities, where we saw 3 young men tragically lose their lives in a sleepover to carbon monoxide poisoning. And I'd ask that we think about them in our moment of silence today. Thank you.
Just a moment of silence, please. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Commissioner Olivas.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we proceed, I'd like to read the following closed meeting statements for the record. Today, Tuesday, February 7th, a closed litigation meeting was held. Only those items described on the published notice and agenda for the closed meeting held today, February 7th, 2023, were discussed at this closed meeting. And I need a motion for approval of this statement, and it will become part of the minutes of this meeting.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
And that passes. Second statement, our closed meeting, I move that the Bernalillo County Attorney and County Manager be authorized to proceed with the matters discussed in the closed meeting held on Tuesday, February 7, 2023, within the parameters set by this commission to include negotiating and accepting proposed settlement offers from Albertsons, CVS, Kroger, and Walmart. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that passes. Thank you. Okay, item number 3, announcements and additions. Madam County Manager, are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and Commissioners. Yes, we have 2. First one is item 3A, Middle Rio Grande Housing Collaborative, to be added to the agenda as item 11B under discussion. And then the second is item 3B, Legislative Office Appointment Policy, to be added to the agenda as item 9A under adoption of resolution. And a vote is required for the changes to the agenda. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I make a motion for the changes.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that passes. So we move on to item 4, public comment and communications. You will have 2 minutes to share your comments. You will then be notified when your time is up. For those participating via Zoom, you'll be muted and moved to the waiting room. Should any of the commissioners have follow-up questions to your comments, you will have an opportunity to answer. Julianne, how many folks do we have signed up for public comment? And please name them as we go.
Madam Chair, we have 4 signed up this evening. We have no participants by Zoom. So we will start off with Ramona Goolsby, followed by John Veltri, followed by Carlos Benavides.
Yes, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Ramona Goolsby,
And I live in Rio Rancho. I am here tonight to continue to encourage this commission to keep voters at the top of their priority list. Previously, I was here discussing a draft of an IPRA bill that has been subsequently incorporated into Senate Bill 180. This bill is an attempt to restrict voters' access to election information, among many other things, which further degrades the confidence citizens have in their government. I appreciate the response I received from Commissioners Barboa and all of us, on my request to keep election data public, as it should be. But the response was a little discerning. I don't think limiting the public's access to government information should be based on the supposed cost and manpower. Both of these issues can be overcome if the government's priorities were like the private industry. Private industry understands the importance of customers. We, the citizens, are your customers. Why doesn't Bernalillo County put CVRs on their website like they do in San Francisco? Why aren't payments to third-party vendors posted so that people can review those and participate? These are just a few examples of things that could be posted to the website that would decrease the amount of IPRA requests that have been sent. So please consider ways that the government can interact with citizens to improve communications, and I think that will go a long way. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for your comments.
John Veltri, followed by Carlos Benavides, followed by Don Gonzalez.
Good evening to all of the Bernalillo County employees in front of me. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. John Veltri, Sandoval County, Placitas. I had sent this packet to you all a couple weeks ago. I had promised I would get in touch with each of the commissioners over the last couple weeks. I have tried to reach out. I've used the common line for all of your phone numbers, which were the same. I had to bombard Julianne with all of the voicemails that I hope you've received, where I've asked you to please get back to me. My phone number is on the business card I gave all of you, except for maybe one or two of you. But it's also on the actual document itself, that I had sent out. Really would like to just make sure, and Julianne, thank you for your help in getting the message out. I know it's just a matter of time before we're going to get to talk real time, each of us, and I'm looking forward to that, to answer any questions or concerns you may have with regards to the material I sent. There are a couple bills out there, HB 110, which is supported by House Representative John Block. That's the one that we really think we could do a lot of good with to improve the election process for everybody involved. I'm a nonpartisan. Once again, I don't care what side of the fence. I'm looking at things that are good for everybody to make our election integrity improved upon in the future. And the other one is, so I'm really in support of that. I'd encourage you to talk to your lobbyists and ask them to help represent that when they're up at the Roundhouse. And the one that I'm opposed to, which I'd ask you to do the same with your lobbyists, is HB 4, particularly around Article 1-11-12-2. And that's where we're talking about drop boxes. There's one major word in there that they want to change from may to shall. That's a big difference. If we have shall, that means there shall be drop boxes in every county, a minimum of 2. And what I think we need to do is get those eliminated. I understand my time's up. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hope I hear from you too.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Carlos Benavides, followed by Don Gonzalez.
All right, I just want to say I appreciate you guys for all the work that you guys do for the citizens and for everybody. But what I want to discuss is about transparency. I want to know if anybody can answer on the panel how they feel about one of your employees saying that IMPRA is used as a weapon. What does that sound like if IMPRA is used as a weapon? IPRA is used for transparency, right, for the people. But if you have an employee that says IPRA is a weapon, it sounds like he's hiding something. It sounds like he's shady. Sounds like he's dirty. And I have videotape of one of your employees that is speaking this way. And his name is John Keel. Also, I would like anybody to ask Ken Martinez why his special assistant attorney stopped the meeting after I requested that it would be recorded. After we made a meeting, I said I wanted it recorded, and he said we won't have a meeting, and he never got back to me. I want to know if I'll be able to get that meeting again from Ken. Ask Ken if there's a reason why he stopped the meeting. Ken, can you answer?
Sir, you,
Can you-
you need to direct
Well, I'm
your
asking you
comments
guys, and
to
you
the
guys aren't
chair.
asking him. Can you ask Ken? Oh, well, never mind. It's too late. But thank you guys for you guys' ear.
Thank you, sir.
I have a video. Guys,
Mr. Don
if you guys want to see
Gonzalez?
Madam Commissioner Chairman and Commissioner members, my name is Don Gonzalez. I'm here to see if this commission can encourage or persuade Bernalillo County Zoning Department to let my daughter park her trailer on the property I own in Alameda. Madam Chairman, if you allow me, I have a written explanation on my dilemma for each commissioner. Ms. Baca has them.
Yes, she's
And
passing.
if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, that concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 5, appointments to advisory boards and committees. Arts Board appointment, Commissioner Quesada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Bernalillo, Abe Torres was appointed when my other appointee unfortunately passed away. As you know, I'm involved and have been my whole life in art and the art industry and performing arts throughout my lifetime here in Albuquerque and in Bernalillo County, and made some really good friends who have dedicated their life to the same. Abe Torres is one of those, so he stepped in, and it's my pleasure with the hard work that he's been able to do for my district, looking at the art projects, and I know you've probably seen some of them. I'd like to bring him back, so I move for approval.
Second your motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Congratulations, thank you. Item B, Code of Conduct appointments, Commissioner, Vice Chair Barboa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am thankful to have Jenny Lusk, who is a experienced lawyer and worked on social justice and worked for ACLU and others in her previous positions, and she has agreed to be the alternate position for the Commission District 3 Code of Conduct Board. She lives in my district, and I'm happy to have her serve in that position. I move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And that passes, thank you. Item C, Commissioners, DWI Planning Council appointment, Commissioner Quesada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I think we're all grateful for the people who volunteer to these commissions that we appoint. Takes a lot of their time, and definitely Mr. Frank Baca, who is a great community member, is very involved in the community. He really appreciated serving on the DWI Planning Council. As you know, that's something that's, a problem for us and both sides of that argument. And so we want to bring the best people to the table, and definitely Frank Baca is the best that I have in my commission in my district. So I would be honored to reappoint Mr. Frank Baca. Thank you, Madam Chair.
It's been
And I
moved.
move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Let's see, so we are item 6, approval of minutes. Commissioners, the minutes of January 9th administrative meeting. I call for a vote or a motion for approval of those minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do each of these separately. Okay, Commissioners, the minutes of January 10th, 2023 administrative meeting. Need a motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that passes. And item C, Commissioners, minutes of January 24th, 2023 administrative meeting, and need a motion to approve.
Move to approve?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's approved. Item 7 on the agenda, the consent agenda has been published and made available to the public. Therefore, I move to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And that passes. Let's see, here we go. Item 8, adoption of ordinances amendment to the county code. Deputy Manager Elias Archuleta and staff are here to present on the technical services, water conservation, floods, roads, and bridges, and subdivisions.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This item is being brought forward from technical services, so I'm going to hand it over to our technical services director, Brian Lopez, and he'll present, and we also have staff for questions.
Good evening, everybody. Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'm Brian Lopez. I'm the Technical Services Director. My team and I would like to take this opportunity to present our technical services item to introduce changes to our water conservation, floods, roads, bridges, and subdivisions ordinance, or ordinance as amendments. This item is part of an effort to update our technical standards and replace our 1988 street standards. A lot of the guidelines and things that we use within technical services have long since been updated since 1988, where a lot of the focus now, we do have water conservation and other things that are part of things that we like to incorporate into all our designs. And our street standards have kind of changed. We're just primarily vehicle-based to more multimodal based. And so this is an effort to kind of streamline those items and incorporate them into our daily work. Also, as part of that, technical services, infrastructure standards, and permit procedures are authorized in various county ordinances. And these ordinance amendments are required to place this information into a standalone technical standards document. A lot of things we're doing in there is also updating definitions and making the terminology consistent with today's guidelines and practices. The county ordinances, which we're looking to be revised, are Chapter 30, which is water conservation, Chapter 38, floods, Chapter 66, roads and bridges, and then finally Chapter 74, subdivisions. As part of this initiative, we have taken these proposed changes to CPC and to NAOP to get as much publication as we could out there, and we have not received any negative feedback or any comments based on what we've proposed so far. And these items that we're requesting to amend, we're looking to introduce publication with today's item. And with that, my team and I will be ready for any questions or comments you may have.
Any comments or questions for Brian? I just wanted to thank you. I got a briefing on this today, and I really I understand that this has been a 4-year process of looking through some very technical details that's very important in the outreach that you have had with neighborhoods as well as the city, and the standards being similar to the city is really important. Particularly on the water conservation, I was very enthusiastic about some of the things that you're talking about there. So thank you and your team for all your work.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner
I
Olivas.
also wanted to piggyback on that and add on that we have green stormwater infrastructure and some other really exciting additions, I think, to our technical standards in this. And thank you to you and your staff for making yourselves available for a briefing and being so thorough and methodical with this.
So what we have here, is there any other comments or concerns from anyone? A motion for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you for all your work. Yeah, agenda item number 9, adoption of resolutions. Madam Clerk, can you please provide a resolution number for item 9A?
I'll try. There you go. Yes, ma'am. AR 2023-19.
So this item is sponsored by Commissioner Olivas, and so I'll let you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item rescinds and replaces our existing policy on legislative appointments. I think this commission saw one of these at our very first meeting, and we've seen several of these in recent months, and quite a few of these in recent years. And this really seeks to hone in on what I think is an important part of this process. I think it was Commissioner O'Malley that during one of those appointments highlighted the fact that when we make a legislative appointment, we are making an appointment in lieu of an election. We are, 5 of us, selecting someone to represent, in some cases, tens of thousands of voters who have not had an opportunity to choose their representation, which is one of the most basic and fundamental rights that we have and a dear part of our democracy. So what really struck me in the appointment that I was part of was the Sunday night before we actually had our vote. I had people emailing me asking who the candidates were. And I think that shows a fundamental disconnect between the process that we have and the transparency that we ought to have with the public and with those who are interested in being involved in that process and understanding the candidates who are before us for consideration to those appointments. So I was really pretty disenchanted, disheartened by that, knowing that there were so many people out there that did not know who those candidates were, and only the 5 of us were really the only ones that were privy to that information, which also included their resumes, their educational backgrounds, their work experience, different candidate qualifications that are important in making those evaluations that I think we all make independently, but based on that same basis of information. So I think what I seek to do through this change to our legislative appointment policy is really ensure that that information is available to the public, because I think that's critical. The public needs to know who we are considering and what their qualifications are. And B, they need to have time to make that evaluation. So I think in here we're specifying a 5-day period for individuals to consider those applicants, for the public to understand and appreciate the qualifications of the candidates before us, so that they may participate in the process in a well-rounded way. So I welcome any discussion on this, and I want to get this started by making a motion to adopt the resolution before us, which rescinds the existing policy and implements this new one.
Second.
Has it been moved and seconded? Any
Madam
discussion?
Chair.
Commissioner Casada.
Yes, thank you. As you know, I am the one who changed the policy to really take politics out of our appointment. Our job is to appoint somebody instantly, that people should never go a day or 2 days without representation. Now, the reason why I think this is being done, because this is very open-ended. This policy that when you take out what I put in, this kind of leaves it up to, we can appoint whenever we want, right? They say, well, we can, as long as there's 2 commissioners or the will of 3 commissioners, they'll call a meeting. That did not happen. We asked for a meeting. We called for a meeting. We called to make sure that somebody was appointed in this position right before the legislature was to start taking place, and we were denied that. So taking away the policy that I put forward, forcing us to do our job, forcing us to make sure that, that a district is represented at all times. There will be an election. To say that that we're taking away the will of the people is definitely an untrue statement. Elections will happen, they will come. Our job is to appoint. Our job is to look at the people who apply. Their argument is, well, not enough people will have enough time to apply. There was plenty of people who applied. Go back and look at the list of candidates, which were very good candidates. In my opinion, what taking away the policy that I put forward is really giving opportunity for special interest groups to find out who they want to support and who they want to get through to be a representative. So it doesn't really set to me that that changing the policy is to try to get somebody who reflects what the voters want. It's really to put special interest groups in front of the people, right? It's a matter of we appoint, we look at it, we pick the right person. When I was through this process, I never, not one time, influenced anybody's vote on who to vote for. All I wanted to do was put policy forward to make sure that a district is represented as quickly and as streamlined as possible. And then let the commission, of the will of the commission, go through these applicants and pick the person they felt that reflects this commission, that reflects this district, and not being pushed by special interest groups or being backed by special interest groups, because our job is not to be up here representing special interest groups. Our job here is, first of all, to represent all people, and number two, to make sure that nobody goes without representation. So to take away the policies that I put in, it had nothing to do with any kind of trying to get my candidate in or this candidate in. And as you saw, we did appoint a representative, and because of the way this open-end resolution reads, is they could do it whenever they want, right? So they can appoint whenever they want. And what they said is, well, we're not trying to do, the Mitch McConnell. We're not trying to wait till the new commission comes in to reappoint someone new. That's not what we're trying to do. Well, that's exactly what happened. So to not have a policy, we just got out of a meeting because the policy was written so open-ended and weak that we're paying the price for it. And I believe changing this back to this open-end, non-listening to the will of the commission when it comes to appointments is wrong. It's wrong. It is not the representation of people. And so I cannot support going back to what we tried as a commission to fix, to put a time in it, to put a time stamp to it, to make us do the job and appoint. Now, would I be willing to look at how many days that takes? Am I willing to look at how many weeks that might take? Sure. If you'd have called me, I would have loved to have that conversation, right? But at the end of the day, having an open-end policy is something I refuse to support, because the constituents who I represent, the voters and the non-voters, should expect better from us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Barboa and then Commissioner Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Olivas, for bringing this important piece of legislation. My grandma used to say, cada cabeza es su propio mundo. And I think that's so appropriate right now, like every head is its own world. And I was on this commission when all of this was happening, and I can say I was in a total different world than my colleague at this table. But to move forward, I'm very appreciative of this because it both rescinds something that was really centered on a rush to get to incumbent legislators their will. And what I love about what yours does, Commissioner Olivas, is it really centers the people. Our folks get one, maybe two, if you include primaries, chances at actually taking a vote. That is so little opportunity to weigh in, and yet there has been ways to plan and use what should be a rare instance to actually plan for a succession and basically a legacy of who gets to sit in the people's seats. So what I really love about yours is that it allows for at least a minimum of 5 days for folks to, once the announcement's been made, for folks to, at minimum, have time to see, apply, and be part of the process. What I love about yours is that it actually gives a time that says that the public has to be aware of who has applied. So the same day that we find out who's applying, the public gets to find out who's applying, and then they can make appropriate calls, right? If there's only one person that they know because that's the person who's using social media the most or whatever it might be, then they don't actually know who to maybe make calls in support of or to weigh or question, right? So I just really love, I wish I had thought of it. Thank you for bringing it forward. And I think that, it includes an emergency for when it is close to the actual legislature or happening within the legislature. So I really think this finally is a solution that centers the voters over politicians. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Betson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's a couple things I like about this, a couple things I don't. Thank you for bringing it forward. I was part of the vote to push this, and part of the rationale at the time was because out of all the appointments we've made over the first 2 years of my term, this one was a lead pipe free-for-all. And it was ugly. It was in the newspapers. We had one commissioner screaming obscenities to another commissioner. And what Commissioner Quesada's original motion was to try to remove the politics out of it. In terms of, we were all getting calls from legislators and political interest groups to push the appointment back, like Mitch McConnell. And that can be done now at any time. And that's my problem with this. Bringing transparency, I think, is a good idea. So, and not to necessarily rush it, although I know if my state representative was gone, I would want representation as soon as possible. Problem is, it's not a democratic process. The democratic process is that we are elected and then we appoint. So it's a republic, and that's the way this is laid out. Now, for instance, the last appointment we made, one of the candidates got over 140 supporters emailing each of us. That applicant didn't get a second in the process. So if this was, if this was a democratic process, that candidate therefore should have moved forward, and yet they didn't, because this is an appointment, and that's one of our responsibilities. And I think each of us take that responsibility seriously. So I like the minimum. That does stretch it out. I would ask for a maximum term of, so I'd like to make a motion for an amendment, Madam Chair, to amend this to add 1 month as a maximum time. If somebody, so in this same instance, if somebody had resigned at the end of the year, it could still be pushed out into the next term, but it's not indefinite. So the calls of the activists saying, wait till the new commissioners are appointed, and then they'll vote the way we want them to vote, that could still be considered, but there's still a framework to go on. It's not completely open-ended. Commissioner Quesada was right. We just got out of a meeting where open-ended statements, there are unintended consequences. And that's what I don't like about this. So I could support this if we can agree to amend it with some kind of ending. So I would like to amend this, add an amendment for 1 month as a maximum.
So how do you word your amendment there?
Actually,
Let me ask
Martinez?
Commissioner Olivas if you would accept a friendly amendment or, discussion about that.
Sure.
Would you consider 60 days?
It's a 2 month 2-month appointment. I'd like to discuss what, is 60 days, I mean, a 60-day session, is our longest session. That seems too long. So I would like to, I think, adding a minimum, I would hold firm to a 30-day.
There is a clause, I remind you that there's an emergency clause, so if a seat were vacated, someone were to pass away, or they retired, or something, that there is an emergency clause to do an immediate, what is the clause? During legislative session, so.
Madam Chair.
And I do like that. Oh, go ahead.
So there is an emergency appointment clause defined within this that removes the timelines and requirements if we are in the middle of a legislative session or within 10 days of a legislative session to ensure that there is full and adequate representation of all districts and individual voters. And I think the reason that I'm suggesting the 60-day timeline to expand on that, for example, in the month of, I believe it's in the month of July, we take a 30-day recess where we don't have any meetings. And in general, the legislature is pretty inactive during that time. So there are times when there is no need to rush that. So for example, if someone resigned, on June 20th, you could presumably have, over a month there where we were not meeting, folks may be out of town, and there may be no legitimate loss of representation during that period of time. So I think that it allows that flexibility, and I would just add to all the commissioners here and the public, as is stated in this resolution and the original resolution that's proposed for repeal, this commission has just in the past few years made, I believe it's 12 appointments, and I'm not sure if that's including the most recent few. And excluding those recent few, these appointments have gone off without a hitch. Some of them have been made as quickly as a couple of days, and some of them have lasted over a month and have had no residual problems until now. And so I think that was another point of introducing this at this current time, is that we are not in the middle of an appointment. We don't have an active vacancy, and so I think it's good to take a look when there is no emergency, there is no active situation that we have to respond to and we are lawfully obligated to respond to. In this case, I think we're able to step back and really look at the situation from a broader perspective. And so I would welcome the amendment if you'd be willing to compromise for something like that, to accommodate a time frame that's not indefinite, but not overly shortened either.
I think your timing is good. I think if the original ordinance had been presented now, I think it would have been, I think it's, there's an aftertaste in everybody's mouth because it was such a contentious period of time that's associated with the intent of this. And so I think your timing is good, readdressing is good. At this point, I think 60 days is too long. So I would ask to defer this vote. And maybe we can meet to discuss. Otherwise, I would hold strong to a 30-day period. I think it's plenty of time. I mean, when you consider, and the other thing is that at the time, there was also a gubernatorial race. Now, if the sitting governor had lost by chance, but still had a remainder of their term to finish with the largest budget in state history, if I was governor, I would have called an emergency session. So having it so open-ended is an issue. The other thing, I appreciate the emergency clause also. But it's also at the will of the chair. And what if there's a disagreement like we had? We had 3 commissioners who voted to make an appointment. And we were told by the county commissioner, by the county attorney, and by the Secretary of State that 3 votes doesn't count. We couldn't do it. So I appreciate having an emergency clause there in case there is a session, but it's still open-ended. Because if the chair says, I want to hold off on that, the way I'm reading it is that it's still open-ended. Is that correct? They don't have to have an emergency session?
Commissioner Olivas?
That's correct. And I would counter you again. Would you go 45? Meet me in the middle.
Oh, yeah, now you're talking. All right. I'll consider it if we can defer this vote.
So I guess I have to ask, is there a motion to amend or is there a motion to defer? Commissioner.
I would like a motion to amend first, if that passes.
So there's been a motion to amend the
For 30
resolution
days.
for
30 days.
30 days. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Or any discussion on that? Any further discussion? Sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
And that fails.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to defer the vote.
There's been a motion to defer.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on deferral? I have a comment on deferral. I just I wanted to make a couple of statements about Commissioner Quesada's statements about this legislation. I don't think that it is too open-ended. I think it is, we are listening to the public. There is due diligence, I guess, is what I'm saying, written into what I read. It does give the opportunity for emergencies during the session. In the last appointment, which was in my district, there was a rush to push the appointment through, but there was no interim committee. I mean, I don't feel that I was unrepresented for those days while we were doing the due diligence of seeking out applicants, going through not we, because I wasn't on the commission at the time, but, so I think the emergency clause during the session fixes that for me. If it were during the session, I think we do need to be able to call an emergency meeting for an appointment. It does call for a special meeting in this legislation, and so I like that. I think that's a really important, again, due diligence. It allows us to have the opportunity to notify the public who those applicants are. So I just wanted to make those comments before we have a vote on the motion to defer.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Benson.
my problem with that is that it is still completely open-ended. The emergency clause really has no strength to it depending on the chair. So if it's a candidate maybe that the chair wants to have in an emergency session, then we can trust we'll have a meeting. But if there is an opposition, in terms of the roles that we were appointed for, we've already seen that 3 votes doesn't count on a 5-member commission. We were told that by the Secretary of State and by our own county attorney. And so then we're relying on a county chair. And we're able to do this during a time when there is no candidate on the line. So I think we can discuss this much more objectively now. I think this is a great start, but there is so much room. And just think if you're not the chair, somebody else is, and it's a candidate or it's a seat that you want filled, would you have a voice? And this is so open-ended that there's no guarantee. And that's what I would like to modify, is to have some kind of voice here.
I think we had another comment.
Yeah, I
Vice
just
Chair.
had another comment, because I think there's so much, and I think these are huge opportunities around our civic engagement. As somebody who does work during the legislative session, has had the privilege to work for a nonprofit. I get to work on exciting community-led projects in the Roundhouse, and there's just been so much misinformation about when representation, the state legislature does not vote outside of either the 30 or 60-day session. So the idea that there's missing representation outside of the session is just not agreed, because everything that happens is also, just as our meetings are, public. So if somebody's truly interested and wants to make sure that they're involved and engaged, they can watch the public just like anyone else. And those are the only days that are actual voting days. So while either people just don't know it or they're trying to literally misinform the public, I just wanted to share that piece, right? That there is, outside of this official legislative session, which is either a 30-day or 60-day session, there is no voting that occurs at the state legislature.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair, Commissioner Casada?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the people that represent us in our district, at least, show up to neighborhood association meetings. We talk about what capital is coming up for the next session. We do, we look for projects that we're doing. They work all year round in my district. It's not about just voting. It's about representing people. It's about them not having someone representing them every single day. You may find one thing urgent more than another, but the average person, the person who cares about their community and what's going on in their community, they want to have that voice there. They want to be able to call that person or meet them at the neighborhood association meetings. In my district, our neighborhood association meetings are the senators are there, the representatives are there, they're always there. We're always working on what we need to do and what a community does. To think that the only work that happens is 30 or 60 days is just not a true statement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casada?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Benson?
I'd like to make one more amendment.
Okay, so wait a minute, we're on discussion for a deferral, which has been moved and seconded, so I guess we need to make that vote first.
Thank you.
So if there's no more discussion, all those in favor to defer?
Aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed?
No.
No.
And that fails. Commissioner Benson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to amend this to have a 45-day minimum period.
Maxim?
A maximum, thank you. And I would like to, again, defer to Commissioner Olivas in that offer, and I would accept, and I would like to make that amendment, please. If I can have a second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Benson. I would be amenable to that. I think the appropriate place for that would be in Section 4. And just to clarify, that would be 45 calendar days. So I would second the amendment.
Thank you.
So that has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 And that passes. Thank you very much for the robust discussion.
There's a motion on the floor.
The original
The
motion.
original motion, thank you. And back to the original motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
As amended, sorry. Aye. All those opposed?
No.
And that passes 4-1. Thank you. Okay, item 10, approvals. There are no approval items, so we will move on to item 11. I would like to clarify, item A is a discussion, will be led by Commissioner Quesada on the Metropolitan Detention Center Regional Facility. But item B, it actually was an introduction, but it will be a discussion. Does that matter how that is termed? We introduced it, okay, and so the item B will follow. Commissioner Quesada, item A. 11A.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So since my first years as a commissioner, I'd asserted that MDC would become its own authority, similar to the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Authority. And I renewed the idea in June of last year when we approved an emergency MDC staffing order under the McClendon to address the ongoing staffing crisis. I put this on the back burner because last year, Senate Memorial 6 and House Memorial 11 recommended a task force to look into the unification of New Mexico's corrections systems, which included the MDC. The task force does not recommend unification of the New Mexico's correction systems at this time. But as I stated then and now, we need assistance from the city of Albuquerque. And when the city ran the jail, the county provided reoccurring funding to assist with the operations of the jail. When the county took over, the city gave the county a one-time payment of $20 million and has not provided funding since then. At that time, in 2007, it costs approximately $49 million to operate the jail, and now it costs approximately $83 million, which represents about 60% increase. The 1/8 GRT that we have dedicated to the jail generates about $25 million in revenue. Yes, the city pay into our GRT, which is a countywide tax. However, approximately 70% of the inmates are city residents. So my idea is, aren't we better together? Shouldn't the city be of the solution on the ongoing challenges we are facing at MDC? I'd like to understand the financial impact taking on inmates from around the state that has affected our budget, and what the costs are currently covered by other agencies to hold their inmates, specifically the city, since the majority of the attendees are within the city limits. What can the county do to begin to facilitate this conversation, or what does it happen at the legislature to investigate whether this is a viable option? What we could take from this task force finding to move forward, right? Because they put a task force together. What are those findings, and how can that assist us on moving into the future for how the MDC works as a regional option? I understand that we do have interest in from Sandoval County and Valencia County. Can the county solicit a feasibility study on options and how to get all the partners to agree? And what would an authority and what authority is there to ensure an agreement? So I do have some information from the task force that was put on at the state, and it says all users of detention services, including municipalities, should cover the costs of the detention. That was one of their findings. Another finding was jail and prison costs continue to rise even as populations decline due to the high cost of program, facility, maintenance, medical, behavioral health care. Now, not all users of the detention contribute to the cost of the detention. And so this was my idea from my first year. Like I said in my opening statement, I did back off because the governor kind of took that and looked at it at a bigger plan for the state. As you know, it failed. But I don't think I have to tell this commission that we have to figure out how we can not only provide higher level of services for our community at the MDC, but how are we competitive, right? Always we have our public safety come up to us. This was the first time they didn't come for public comment, really asking us, how can we fund it better? How can we be competitive? I think really that we're the only, people that are paying in, and everybody's able to sort of, wash their hands of it. I think it's not really a fair deal for us. And it's not like I'm asking that we would fund it less, right? That we're trying to, like I'm trying to get funding and put it in other programs that we are in charge of. But we'd fund it the same. But the thing is, if we can get more people to buy in and be responsible, and then as the Water Utility Authority, how that exists, they would sit on that board. They would make decisions based on what's happening at MDC, from medical providers to who the warden is. I've been on this commission 6 years. We've gone through a lot of wardens, and we've gone through a lot of medical providers. And I think a lot of it really has to do is, with staffing and being able to maintain staffing and really being able to afford to run a facility that at this point has been, I think the county's done an amazing job with what they have. They don't have enough. And I don't know of a better idea or a better solution than this one. So as you know, before I bring stuff normally to pass, I bring it for discussion so we can discuss it, so we can push it around, maybe talk to other elected officials, see how they feel. You can do your homework, you could talk to people in the city, Valencia County, Sandoval County, but I don't have the numbers right now of who's in the facility that is not in Bernalillo County, who actually resides in the city, in Sandoval County, and the surrounding areas. But we know that there's a lot. And I'm not trying to point blame. I'm trying to find a solution to a problem that desperately needs it.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Benson.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Quesada, for this discussion. The situation in MDC is not working. So I think we have to think outside the box for what the solution is. And I think the county is doing the best it can to manage it. The county staff, we've got great staff at MDC, but it's such a complicated problem that we have to do something new. So I think this is a great start to looking at how to improve the situation. And I support this for further discussion.
Any other comments? Vice Chair Barboa.
Yeah, so I voted in support of the furthering of discussion last year, and I guess I'd like to know what our next steps, or if this is mostly, like, I don't know if personally, if I was Sandoval or Valencia County, why I would want to give up what's probably a very limited budget. And I think those rural communities would bark really loudly the fact that Bernalillo County, who has the largest budget in the state, would be asking for their input. But I do hear the pieces about the city, and we also know that, like, the city's trying to up their public safety and fill their police department, all those things. So I guess, is that I'm just interested in where the discussion or how the discussion moves, if somebody's working on what a solution could be other than a discussion. Like, what do you consider next steps, I guess?
Commissioner Quesada?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. So next steps is, conversations with, Sandoval County. Sandoval County is not a small community. They're rather a large city now. That's Rio Rancho. And I think that if they do have a budget that they put towards their jail, and they would be able not to have to do that in their own jail, but use our jail. So they still do have funding for that. They just don't let their criminals run around free. And a lot of times what happens is they end up in our jail. And so I think this is a better solution for them and their funding, because then their residents are being treated at a higher level, because now we have the funding and the resources and the staffing to make that not only a safer place for their residents, but that we're doing it at a higher level here in Bernalillo County. They all end up here. The statistics and the information is there. They end up with us. A lot of times, even people from the state facility end up with us in our jail. I don't think the governor would have come up with an idea like this if she didn't think this was a feasible idea as a state idea. For whatever reason, it didn't pass. But I think we, like we always have been, are the leaders of the state here in Bernalillo County. We put some really good, innovative ideas forward, and we pass them, and we move them on. And, I think this could be a shining example. So I will now pass it over to County Manager, who has been helping me work on this idea. And, I know she kind of shelved it my first couple of years because she was so busy and we had this building and we had all these things going on, and I get it. But I think now she kind of sees that I might be onto something here. And so she's really been helping me move this forward. So I'd like to, if I could, Madam Chair, turn it over to Madam County Manager.
Sure. Madam Chair and Commissioner Casada, so we did have those discussions a couple of years ago, and I'm glad that you did bring it up. The good news is that we are talking to the city, and we are talking about, different ways to, like, receive inmates at the MDC and how we work together on transporting inmates. And just other, just other ideas. We're also talking, having great discussions with UNMH on the medical provider. We talked about that, and all of you have talked to me about having collaboration, like from the community, as far as our medical services. And we hear you. UNMH has really stepped up to the plate. I don't know to what extent we'll be meeting on Friday to discuss how they can step in and how they can help us, with our medical provider. Because as you know, the medical contract was terminated, and so we are going to be doing things differently, and we are going to be soliciting their input, and we're going to be accepting any assistance that they can provide. And we're sort of taking it from there. So we just so you know, we are actively discussing options with the city on intake, on, the medical provider, on transporting inmates to the MDC or to UNMH. So, so I think it's a good start, and I appreciate you bringing that up. And as far as an authority, we can certainly discuss that. I know that, we've looked into it. There's various ways that you can do it. You can do it, by, I believe maybe a JPA or an MOU between, if it's just the city and the county. It just depends on how we lay that out. Could be, if you decide that and if Sandoval County and Valencia counties decide, we did talk to them. They said they were interested. And that was basically the extent of the conversation. So I think, Madam Chair, Commissioner Quesada, we can certainly explore a little further that option of an authority. And then I will also let you, I'll just keep you informed on the collaboration with UNMH and with the city. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, Madam Chair, I'd like to follow with that. And look, I just want the community and everybody in the city that may be watching us here tonight, we buy into your projects as well. We're not trying to say that, you haven't been a partner and that you don't do good things too. And sometimes you turn to us for help. And, we know we're serving a lot of the same people. Maybe not in my district. My district's a large unincorporated area, but I think as a county as a whole, we do. We put in money into many different projects. Just recently, their new center on Gibson. So we put quite considerable amount of dollars in there. This is more about let's not. I'm trying not to talk punitive. I'm trying to talk that we're stronger together. Right, and that if we work together, there's some of these big problems that we can solve. When I first joined the commission, it was rare that we would be able to talk to the city and collaborate. And since my first 6 years here, we've done a lot of really great projects together, working with the city and the state. And I believe this is another one that this would help us, solve a huge problem that we're having. And so I just wanted to put out that we're not trying to dump anything on anybody else. We're not saying you're not helping or we're not collaborating. I'm just encouraging that we just want you to collaborate with us on just this big project for us to make sure that it's done right for the community. That's all. Not calling anybody out. I just want to make sure of that.
Madam Chair.
Let's see, Vice Chair Barbo, then Olivas, then Benson. Thank you.
I guess, thank you for the discussion. I think we have to keep discussing and figure out some solid next steps. I guess I feel like right now as the body that's elected and is held accountable to what happens at MDC. That would probably be part of what I would want to consider, and whether it's a joint power agreement or who's the ultimate accountable body. If it's a collaborative, or if those joint powers, how does that, who do then people turn to hold, just as part of the discussion, and as that would get worked out. Yeah, and I think I'd like to see the discussion move into some actions or some discussion with those actual other players.
So,
I supported it last time.
Madam Chair, yeah, but real quick, it would work like the Water Utility Authority, where we sit there, but we make the decision as that body, not as individual, right? So it wouldn't just be on the county now, it would be everybody making those decisions and response. Yes, yeah, it would be their elected officials, just how they sit on the thing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Olivas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Quesada, for bringing this item. This is our biggest single expense in our budget, and it's a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal for public safety. It's a big deal for people that are in there, for families that have people inside, or you know, they're moving between. And so this is a really important facility as we talk about public safety issues and behavioral health and treatment and transitions between those two concepts. I think this is a worthwhile discussion and something worthwhile to continue to pursue, particularly as we talk about my first meeting, I introduced a discussion item on public safety priorities, and MDC is a big part of that. And I think this is a piece of that, especially in the long-term sense of how do we change that facility for the better, and how do we change the efficiency of that to make it more efficient for taxpayers, but also offer more programming for people that are there so that that facility serves us as a community better. I do want to highlight just a couple concerns that I have. These are not concerns about this discussion or this idea, but just things that I think we have to consider as we discuss this. The city, so my district, about 85% of my residents live in the city of Albuquerque, and they pay their Bernalillo County taxes just like the people that live in the unincorporated areas. And I know other commissioners up here probably have even more city residents than I do. And so I think it's a little bit unfair, or perhaps we just need to be careful with our language there in saying that those taxpayers and the city of Albuquerque in that sense does contribute to our facility just as much as our county residents. But I do understand, you know, on a given day, I believe about 70%, somewhere in that neighborhood, are inmates that are booked by APD, by the city. But that doesn't mean that those taxpayers didn't pay for that. And in effect, I think in some cases you might be asking them to pay twice if we're saying we want more from the city. So I think we have to be careful about that and figure out how we involve them in ways that make the city more efficient, or that make the facility more efficient and more beneficial to the city so that they're getting something for that investment. The other issue I want to raise that you know is the proverbial thing in the room here is the McClendon lawsuit. I think that's probably would be one of the biggest hindrances here to attracting partners to that facility, because you know no one wants to buy into a lawsuit, right? Everybody wants to get out of a lawsuit. So I think that presents some challenges, not insurmountable, and I know that the county manager and the new warden are working actively to try and do everything they can to resolve that. But I love the idea of additional programming and additional resources, additional COs, by having other communities, other entities, other players buy in and participate in that facility in an equal or proportional manner to whatever their sort of buy-in is. And the last thing I wanted to say is on the medical contract, which I know all of us are very concerned about, and this isn't really on the issue of the discussion here, but I just want to highlight again that I think that's a really important contract, probably the most important contract in the county that there is. And I really hope that we can get this one right and really engage with our local providers and our local players that care about this community, that live in this community, that serve this community and have served this community for their entire careers in many cases. And I think involving them as much as possible in that facility is really the key to having a medical provider or provider group, whatever it is, that stands the test of time and doesn't just last a year, 6 months, or 2 years, and then we do this all over again. And meanwhile, we continue to run up the bill and more importantly, lose lives and livelihoods as we see all too often. So I appreciate you bringing this item, Commissioner Quesada, and I think it's an important thing for us to continue to pursue.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Benson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to add to Commissioner Oliva's statement that I think the city taxpayers consider MDC their responsibility and also their service organization to help with crime in the community. So I think really it's a question on the priorities of the different governmental agencies and the budgets. And it's the agencies that determine those budgets. And we do help Commissioner Quesada discuss the Gibson facility, which we see as one of our responsibilities as well as responsible for the county. Same with the West Side Homeless Shelter. We've contributed funds to that. The city has asked, and we've said, yes, how can we help? And MDC is just bigger than any of these projects, and we need help. And the city taxpayers, I think they would all support a union here. And also what I've seen from Sandoval County is they've been great civic partners in collaborating with us with Bernalillo County on different projects, from business development on forward, and sharing of resources. So, but back to the original point that the majority of these of our inmates are booked and delivered by APD, and so it's a problem that is because of the drug epidemic and medical resources that are available. It's just a huge problem, and I don't know what the outcome looks like. And I know you're not saying you know what the outcome looks like, but it's worth the discussion, bringing all the players to the board. We've got to fix this for our taxpayers. I don't think there would be any Bernalillo County taxpayer who would object to this. So, but this gives them a chance to, or come up with even better ideas. So I think it's a great first step.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Quesada?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do collect the taxes when it comes to, property, but we do distribute that money, I mean, it's not like we bring all that money into Bernalillo County and we spend it on Bernalillo County. We do give, and I don't know, Ms. Reagan could tell us what the percentage of the money that we do from the taxes we do collect, that we do give to the city. I also know we give to APS, CNM, UNMH. So it's, I think we're good stewards of the money. We spread the money around. I don't know what those percentages are, Ms. Reagan, but if you know off the top of your head what we do give back. We don't just take it and put it in our pocket and do whatever we want with it. We're very aware that the city of Albuquerque, that a lot of them are the residents, and we do distribute that money back into the community.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Quesada, I think you're talking about property taxes, that we collect on behalf of the other entities.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact number. I can get that for you.
Yeah.
But yes, we collect 1 month, and then on the 20th of the following month, we have to redistribute that money, and it's to the tune of about 300 million or so that we distribute back based on their mill levies that they've levied against property taxes. But I will follow up and get that information back. Treasurer Burse actually has that data.
Oh, okay. All right. But, I just wanted to make the point that, we do spread the money around. It is not something that we, put in our pocket and do it with our will. We make sure that it's definitely spread across the entities that need it, and including the city of Albuquerque. That's all I got. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Quesada. Okay, so we will move on to item 11B. And this is an introduction of a resolution supporting the establishment of a Middle Rio Grande housing collaborative. And I want to start, say a few words here and then turn it over to my co-sponsor, Commissioner Olivas. What we are envisioning here is a true collaboration between the city of Albuquerque and Bernalillo County to address a great need, and that is the homeless crisis that we have in our community. Because shelter is a basic necessity and human right. On any given night, at least 1,200 people are sleeping outside or in shelters. And we have always said that we need to address this. It's a multifaceted approach that needs to address this crisis of homelessness. So this is one component. It is not the only mechanism. We have a lot of other programs that we are dealing with behavioral health and our public safety. But the thought here is creating a collaborative that will place a strong arm on actually developing housing. And we're talking about market rate as well as affordable housing, sustainable communities from for housing for seniors to people in poverty to the homeless. It doesn't negate the wonderful work that our housing authority in Bernalillo County, our housing department in Bernalillo County has, nor the Albuquerque Housing Authority. It will allow those two organizations to continue with their public housing and their excellent voucher programs. But what it does do is look at establishing an entity that has the ability to leverage more funds, state funds, federal funds. And it does have propose an appropriation that each party, each partner, the city and the county, would put forward $500,000. So it would really be seed money when you're talking about housing. $1 million is a lot to the average person, but really when you talk about housing, it's a small amount. So it's a good faith effort as we go up to the legislature and talk to them about helping us here in the most populous county that has a real need for more affordable housing and more mixed-use housing. And so it's up for discussion tonight, and we will bring it forward for a vote on February 21st. We have had some good, robust discussions with staff, and I think that's really important. But this is a real opportunity, and I'm very happy to say that the Albuquerque City Council introduced a mirror resolution last night, and they will be discussing it and voting also in their second meeting in February. So our timing is very good, moving forward with a really strong collaborative. And I love the name Middle Rio Grande Housing Collaborative. It really is not reinventing the wheel. We're fashioning it after Mesilla Valley, which is Doña Ana County and Las Cruces, have been doing this for quite some time now, smaller community, but very successfully. So with that, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Olivas for a few words too.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to compliment the chair and also our partners at the city. It's pretty rare, I think, that we see city councilors, county commissioners, the mayor, our own county manager, all having discussions about an issue that really underpins so many of the problems that we see in our community. When you talk about some of our behavioral health treatment programs, you see really successful outcomes sometimes, and then a gap where there is no housing. And that's just one gap. You know, other gaps are people that are underhoused, or people that are spending a significant portion, much more than half of their income on their housing. And so this resolution and this entity really seeks to bridge some of those gaps and look at this problem from a little bit different perspective. I really want to commend our own Bernalillo County Housing Department, which has an absolutely stellar reputation around the state and really frankly around the country for the excellent voucher program that they're running. And it's an absolute success story, and the city has similarly has a very robust housing department, the AHA. But what this really seeks to do is look at this problem from a different perspective and say that we really need to develop a plan with metrics, with long-term goals, and articulate what those goals are and how we reach them through development, planning, land banking, and really approaching this from a different perspective. And this doesn't mean that the public sector, that the county and the city or this entity are going to build all these units. I think we want to be clear that that's not necessarily the intention here. But it's to set forward a policy direction through a long-term planning process, and looking at creative financing mechanisms, public-private partnerships, economic development incentives, really using all of the tools we have collectively as the city and the county to attack this problem differently than we currently are. And so it's really my hope and my pleasure to sponsor this resolution, because I think this has the potential to change the game a little bit here and add to our housing stock and do it in a way that creates sustainable communities. And by sustainable communities, I mean communities of mixed incomes and mixed levels of housing, where this isn't something that burdens any one neighborhood or changes the character of our communities, but instead allows everybody to rise together and brings the city and the county together as partners. And so it's been a really exciting endeavor here as a new commissioner and coming in, talking about city-county collaboration, and that's actually what we're doing here. That's what this will do. And I think that, of course, the devil's in the details and how this gets executed. And the leadership and all those things that have to be filled in. But this is really the first step in this journey, is defining what the goals are and setting forth this intention to pursue this. And in the intervening couple of weeks here before our next meeting, I think it's always has been our intention to use that time to accept more public input, more input from staff and stakeholders, and see what other concerns or what other changes can be made to this, if needed, to make it even stronger. But I think this is a really good start. And as we go forward, I would just urge my colleagues to consider this and support this, as I think this is something that will really change how we look at housing going forward.
Thank you. Vice Chair Barbour.
Thank you. Just, I really appreciate you both for bringing this forward. I was able to be in part in some of the discussions in the previous year that happened with the city. I think what we're all looking at, and you both made the points, right? Not that just the period housing crisis, right? That right now my son and his wife, no kids, but they, have working class wages. One works for Golden Pride, the other works for the University Hospital Security. And those, and they're paying $1,000 a month for a studio apartment. I mean, it's just, our families are facing, from folks living in the streets to just folks trying to survive and get housing. We need some kind of relief. I think that this hopefully allows for folks to, for somebody to take charge of what's needed around being a land acquisition, and how do we plan and do the work to sort of get those things implemented into our community. So I'm glad that these conversations are happening and that people are trying to think jointly again how we can really put in to solve this housing crisis that's impacting everyone, not, definitely our folks living unhoused, but all of us across economic backgrounds.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Casada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we all know what situation we are when it comes to housing. I think even a bigger discussion needs to be based on. So I have a friend who's receiving disability. He gets $700 a month. That's it. That's what he gets. I was able to get him a job doing the phone work, surveys and stuff for a company that does that kind of stuff. He's really good. He's got a great voice. He's got a great personality. He used to be an actor and a musician, so he's got it going. He's good with people. But I said, hey man, this might be your way to a house, or and he goes, oh no, I can only make X amount of dollars. If I make a penny over this, they take away my disability. And because he also has bipolar, I had to convince him not to give up his disability because the odds of him losing his job are very high, right? So if we're going to start looking at, I think affordable housing, we need to start looking at some of the policies that we can change to make this, I think, a greater success. We fight for $15 an hour for the people that we know need it and deserve it. And then the very next day, landlords turn around and raise their rents $300-400 a month. And so that $15 an hour that we fought very hard for those people doesn't go to them. It goes to the people who actually voted against it in Santa Fe, saying, we disagree with that, we shouldn't be having to pay that, but then they're the ones with the money in the pocket. So I think through this authority, I think we can look at some of these systemic problems and show that if we can change it through our mechanism, right, that we can show that, hey, you don't have to raise the rents for 5 months or 5 years, and still be able to make ends meet and keep something going. I think those things need to really happen because I'm excited to support it as long as we start looking at the other systemic problems that cause us to be in a situation where we can't afford to buy our own home. To what the American dream really is, and to be honest, the American dream for most people isn't an apartment. It's a home with a yard and a family and a dog. And we want to make sure that, and the people who don't want that and people who want to live in a community where, they don't have to deal with a yard, where they don't have to deal with a dog. Maybe they don't want any children, right? They want an easier way of life. We got to make sure that we're looking at all aspects of what affordable housing means to, to the community here in Bernalillo County. But I'm happy to support it. I think it's a great thought, and I think because of its own mechanism, we really have an opportunity to change some of these things that are really hindrances that are happening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Benson.
Just a couple of thoughts. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to support this so that I'd like to hear more because we definitely have a housing shortage. It's turned into a crisis. But I also look at the surrounding communities that do have the growth. So a lot of new home buyers are moving to Rio Rancho or Los Lunas or Belen because it's an easier process. And I know home builders who've said they don't want to build here. And my only concern with this is that adding another layer of government intervention will make it less appealing. So going back to your minimum wage, $15, the best way to create inflation is to create inflation. So if you raise minimum wage $15, and we saw that over the pandemic, the government gave everybody money and they had more money to spend. So it drove up demand, prices went up. So, and now we've got a problem to reverse it. Well, we've got a problem of a shortage of houses. I hope part of this solution is creating more houses, not preventing landlords from, recouping the cost of their investment. I'd like to encourage investors to come here to create housing that then people can move into, so they don't have to move to Los Lunas, don't have to move to Rio Rancho. I hope that's part of this solution. I don't know really anything about this. Definitely agree that we have a housing shortage that needs to be resolved. Hopefully we can block and tackle without creating more barriers to any kind of development. That's my only caution here.
Thank you. I want to comment on that real quickly. I mean, what we're not talking about, we don't want to create another bureaucracy. What we want to create is a collaborative that has the ability to be, an agile, we want housing production, we want more homes. And so in our language here, we're talking about creating this authority and creating a joint powers agreement between the two agencies. And again, working together, you have the ability between the city and the county and the state to leverage those funds and not be competing for those funds. So I think that is our intent, what you're talking, and so I'd be happy to talk further with you as we
Great.
move forward. So,
Great, thank you.
thank you. Vice Chair Marble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just in the spirit of discussion as well, I guess I'm of the assumption that this, maybe you all know a little more, this opens up ability to think about like cooperative housing. Is that true? Things that I've heard of, like rental agreements that are cooperative, people can maybe own the rentals, they gain something, but just that there's other options that I think our community's been begging for. Would you assume this opens up that opportunity for those discussions and exploring those?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Lewis.
Yeah, and I think that's been part of the discussions that we've had, which, you know, at this point are pretty non-specific in that form, but we've definitely talked about how do we make sure that we're building equity in our communities so that it's not just, you know, a permanent landlord-tenant situation where, you know, at some point the rents rise high enough and incomes don't rise in parity. And you end up in a situation where someone's lived in the same place for many, many years and is forced out with nowhere to go. And that's exactly what we seek to avoid here by creating something that kind of can help reimagine some of the ways that we approach housing. So whether it's looking at using more federal dollars for programs like you're talking about, equity building programs, not always, you know, maybe we need to look at some of the ways that we're using federal money now and how do we use it more efficiently in a way that really invests in our community. And so I think that we're trying to take an all the above approach here where we're not just wanting to just incentivize development of, you know, landlord tenant type communities, but really everything, because this is, and that's why we emphasize sustainable models here. So this isn't just about affordable housing or publicly owned housing. That's part of it. It's absolutely got to be part of this equation. But it's also about market rate housing. It's about apartment buildings. It's about housing. So I think that at this stage we haven't, you know, we're not quite there yet. And a lot of this comes in the next phase when the leadership of this unit actually develops what that plan is. And one of the things that the first thing in here is planning and surveying where affordable housing currently exists and where the gaps are. Because that's, you know, you can't really decide how to move forward until you know what the problem is at hand. And we know there's a problem, but we don't know the specifics. So I think this will move in the direction of where both the commissioners are.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on. Item 12, announcements of the next commission meeting.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, Commissioner.
I'd like to request a point of parliamentary privilege here. As you all know, at my first meeting, I introduced a discussion item on public safety priorities. And in the intervening months, very grateful to the chair for her help in meeting with some of our public safety partners, from the chief to Mr. Lindley and different departments, talking about these public safety issues. And I really think that this is an issue of just absolutely critical concern to our whole community, and something that all of us up here, I think, agree needs to be addressed and we know is a priority. And so I wanted to propose a community listening session to really take those ideas that we've set forth in that document, that public safety, comprehensive public safety priorities. And I wanted to propose a community listening session to really invite the community in, invite our public safety departments, the different players, both from within the county and within the city, our CPCs, our SORB, our animal services, advocacy groups in those spaces, the public at large, to really participate in a discussion with the commission and present their concerns and their ideas. Because I think, you know, that list in my mind is very comprehensive, but I think that the best ideas we'll get will come from the community and from the people that are experiencing things in different ways than all of us because everybody's seeing things in different ways. So I would like to propose this idea of a community listen session to be delegated to the chair to determine the appropriate time and place for that.
I very much second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Benson.
Thank you, Commissioners. Okay, so last items, I would like to announce the next commission meeting, Tuesday, February 21st, 2023, Board of Finance meeting at 4 p.m. in these chambers. And then Tuesday, February 21st, 2023, the administrative meeting at 5 p.m. in these chambers. And if there is no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.